Thank you for the brevity on that one, Shane. We're going to move on to Joyce. Are you ready with your questions?
Hi, Carla. Yes, thank you. Hello, Shane. Me again. I know I've posed many questions to you in the past, and you have said that, you know, in your position, you're not really entitled to an opinion, but that you want to represent the constituents. So I guess I just want to ask you then, point blank, are the majority of your constituents for or against lockdown measures? And how do you come to that conclusion?
Joyce, I guess if you put it in the question in that way, who would be in favor of locking down? So again, if you're talking health restrictions, that's one conversation. If you say lockdown, that's a different connotation. So if you want to talk about the current health restrictions or the health restrictions we've had along the way, or the trying to get back so there's zero health restrictions, I just need you to rephrase your question. I can answer appropriately.
So when I think of lockdown measures, I think of the decisions that have been in place that impact people, like, you know, the limiting the services that can be provided. So right now, massage therapists, people who style hair, they're not allowed to work. Okay, so the lockdown measures that impact people's life in many ways. That's when I think of lockdown measures, I think of that. So specifically, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I guess the short answer is nobody likes this. Are people understanding? Yes. There's a different spectrum of who understands. And I kind of gave this reference, and I did a speech in the House on it. So our area is a bit unique, and well, I guess it's not unique, but I think it is. I really think it's special. So Edmonton borders us. So we have a different demographic on the east side. And then the further west I go, the more rural that we become. The people who choose to live in our areas, and using Paul as an example, so he lived in St. Albert. He was, I'm guessing, right in the city of St. Albert, and now he's moved out here for acreage living or otherwise. There's a mix. So there's people that work and play in Edmonton, and they happen to sleep here at night. It's a bedroom community, depending on that end. The perspectives of folks around those areas, and if I put it in context, the folks in Parkland Village, there's about 1,700 people there. That's bigger than Marathorpe. So again, when we're talking our constituency, it's pretty different. And when I go from, let's use Onaway as kind of the center point, and that's why I kind of chose that, it's kind of in the center. When I go from there and I see people walking normally down the street without masks on, because you don't require them for being outdoors, walking down the street, grabbing something from the local store, they probably chose to mask up or otherwise. Because of health restrictions. I didn't see a lot of our folks putting on masks to go into stores when it wasn't mandatory. But when I go to Edmonton and I see a lady of about your age and stature, seems relatively healthy from, you know, a person passing by, and she's carrying a 6-pack of Coke, and she's wearing safety glasses, a grinding shield, and double mask walking down the street. That's the challenge that we have right now. So our community has a variation of both. And right now, the overall, from what I'm seeing in the last week, a lot of people understand where we're going so we can get through this darn thing. Nobody likes it, but we're kind of tolerating it and putting up with it until we can finally get through this.
So you're saying
if I may assist?
Okay.
If I may assist, I mean, you're using language like get through this thing, Shane. What can you define what this thing is? Because
I would say COVID.
98.
Yeah, I would say COVID. So,
so again, Carla, with a 99% recovery,
I would say COVID however, is where we're at. That's what we want to get to, and that's where we get to the next point. So if we're going to get through anything, it's going to be that we're finally put COVID to bed and we're done with this. That's where I'm saying that.
Do you feel, based on your
sorry, Carla, maybe I can talk to Joyce, unless you have a different question.
No, I'm going to just mediate this. I was tasked with mediating. So
Joyce,
did
I answer your question, or did you have something else for that?
I do want to, I'm not clear on your answer, so I was going to add to it, but
okay, so please answer that, and I want to talk to you, Joyce, not Carla jumping in mediating, because she's asking the question for you, and that's unfair.
Okay, so basically, you're saying the majority of people don't like the measures, but I guess I want to know from the feeling that you got from the constituents, nobody likes it, but there are people who are supportive of it, and the people who are not supportive of it.
Yep.
So of that, so let's break that down then. How do you know, or how do you, no, not how do you know, but do the majority of your constituents support the lockdown measures or not?
Yeah, so currently, from the information that I got from people, again, from dialogues like this, you're going to have different opinions on it. And currently, people understand the majority is kind of in the context of this last bit, especially yesterday. Just get it over with. Like, let's finish this up. Let's wrap it up and go there. Okay, and so the way one healthcare professional put it to me, because again, I was on a call with some folks from cystic fibrosis the other day, and we were having a similar conversation. Everyone hates this. Like, we don't want to do this. We want to get back to normal life and freedoms. And it honestly, it pains me to have to be part of a group that has to make these decisions because it's so extraordinary. And we can talk about statistics and everything else later as a different dialogue. But to look at some of these things that we've had to do, it's like a grass fire. We managed to do the periphery burn. So we got the fire break on the outside. And right now, the majority is going to burn through. So either people are going to naturally have immunity to it. There was the lucky ones. People have already maybe had it. It's gone around. They already got it. They're going to roll up their shirt sleeve and get a vaccination. But this whole thing, the population is going to reach herd immunity one way or another. And we can see that in other jurisdictions, whether it's a right way or wrong way. Everyone's tried a little bit of a different way to skin the cat here. And I think the only way you'll know for certain what happens if we ever have to go through something like this, heaven, hopefully it's not within our lifetimes, but maybe they'll have some lessons learned from it. But one way or the other, it will go through the population and this will end. And it's just a matter of how many people potentially are sick at the same time with it. That's really been the whole problem all along.
Well, okay, but I still want to get to the point that if there are people who support the lockdown measures versus people who don't.
Oh, shoot, yeah. So I've got yeah, no, so I'll just jump on that really, Joyce, really quick. So I've got letters coming in that are asking for stricter measures. I've got letters coming in asking for law enforcement to go out. I've got a ton of those. Right. So it's from all ends right now.
Okay, so let's just look at that for a second, okay? So if the majority of the constituents do support lockdown measures, then are you concerned at all that they have been given inaccurate information that has influenced their position?
Oh, shoot, absolutely.
For example,
there is so much misinformation out there. It's crazy, and that's why it's nice to have these conversations. So there's so much information. Oh, sorry, did you want me to finish, or did you have another?
No,
part?
I hear the misinformation, but let's be clear that where it actually comes from as well, right? So for example, I see the government as you know, really not informing people effectively. So for example, we know that the Alberta COVID death rate is 0.05%. Okay, so 0.05% of the people have died from COVID. Majority are elderly, and the majority have multiple comorbidities. Now, we don't ever hear the government talk about that. So then the other thing is, we know the province has never shown us that lockdown measures have actually saved lives, nor have they proven that lockdown measures cause less harm than a disease with 99.9% recovery rate. Also, we know that every flu season for the past several years, hospitals have struggled and have always been overrun. But we don't hear these things from the government. So what we hear from the government is that, you know, there's cases, and it's very much, you know, even with that Amber Alert thing the other day, it's very much delivered with fear, eliminating all of those facts. Like, if people actually knew that the death rate was 0.05%, then would all of your constituents who are begging for more lockdown measures be begging for more lockdown measures? Or has fear been like fueling their perspective and helping them actually draw their conclusions and their perspectives? So is it possible that the people who support lockdown measures have not been adequately informed and, you know, with the true nature of COVID, and as such, do their perspectives count then if they're not based on facts? So again, therefore, is it logical to support lockdown measures when there's no proof the measures have saved lives? There's no proof that the measures are even justified. A 0.05% death rate. I mean, cigarette smoking, cancer, heart attacks, you know.
Joyce, could you get to the question?
Yeah. And then there's no proof that the lockdown measures have been causing less harm than a disease with a 99.95% recovery rate. So how do you support, so if the constituents are being misinformed with, this fear mongering about no hospital beds, which, that's been consistent over the multiple years. So they've been fed this narrative that's terrorizing them. So how do you support measures that are not based on facts, but are based on the fear mongering? So the constituents, you're saying maybe the majority of them support lockdown measures, but do you listen to them if they're not being informed? Like, that's my question. And I mean, there's so much more.
Let's let them answer.
So what's your background, Joyce? What is your vocation, your business? What do you do?
I'm a life skills coach. I do marriage counseling with a focus on trauma, working through childhood trauma. Okay.
So a lot of emotion, and I can sense that from you. There's a lot of emotion-based items, and typically, I don't want to assume, but a lot of folks in your field work through emotions to get to a conclusion. Word usage is very important, and also a thesaurus comes in awfully handy because you can use different word usage that may or may not trigger different items and elicit emotions. Is that correct?
Can you just answer the question, Sean?
No, I'm going to answer the question, and it's Shane. So your word usage and your point back to how people are fearful. A lot of the items that you're choosing to use for word usage could also be reflected back on you of what your positions and your feelings are and what you're fearful of. So would you?
Yeah. So I actually am not afraid.
In answering your question, are you fearful, and should I take your opinion?
I'm not fearful.
Okay, so you're not fearful.
I've had COVID.
But would you propose that somebody else who has an opinion or concerns based on whichever information or media outlet or fact sheet that they choose to look at or analyze is not warranted, and that yours is more valid than theirs?
I guess what I want to stick to, Shane, is the idea that if people are asking for more lockdown measures, I don't see the government providing the full picture, like the facts. So again, back to my point.
Okay, so if I can, in the idea of time, so this is good because we're having a healthy dialogue, and this is how it goes back and forth, so I can understand where your headspace is at. So with that, I would agree that the media has done a fantastic job of captivating audiences. Social media has taken on a life of its own, and where the difficulty is trying to sort what's fact or which opinion or which debate on items. If I go to Dr. A and I don't like his diagnosis, I'm going to go to Dr. B. I mean, we've been predicated to do that throughout our whole lives. At least we should, if we're looking at our medical histories, etc. So would I suggest, or would I feel that there's a lot of fear out there in the media? Absolutely. The way they sell papers and the way that they get more people to watch is to have a splashy headline. If everybody isn't cognizant of that, please feel free to check out the headlines and the word usage they use to elicit emotions so you can do it. There's always the thing that misery loves company. Well, so does fear. Fear feeds it, and it ties into it. So again, using that case and that example of that person in Edmonton who's wearing the grinding shield walking down the street because they feel that that is going to protect them, severely contrasts with the individuals out in Onaway. So yes, Joyce, people do form their opinions based on what information they choose to believe, or heaven forbid that it's from a fearful place. So as an elected official, you take those opinions that come in from either end, and quite frankly, there's a lot that fall in on the hard left and the hard right. The center, which is the majority, people tend to tune out a bunch of that, and they make common sense decisions based on it. So again, when you're pointing out statistics for deaths, it was never about mortality. It was simply about ICUs, not overall hospital. It was based on data that we had at the time until we could get our own. And that's, the testing. And then you'll open up another can of worms. Is the test valid? Is this good? Is that good?
Okay.
So let's put it in context. You have to base information and decisions on the best information you have, and it's moving forward. At the end of this, like any other good project, you do a post-mortem to see how effective you were, and you put those back into place so you can make improvements, continuous improvements. Each jurisdiction is kind of doing something a little bit different. And you can see that through the comparators of when we're being held to account against South Dakota or Sweden or Texas at this point. And again, everyone's trying to get the right information to make the decisions they can when they have at hand. But does anyone have a recipe book how to do this? Nope.
Well,
we've never done it before.
it's been a year, right? I'm sorry, Carla, but it has been a year, and we are doing, you know, what's the definition of insanity, Shane? It's doing the same things over.
Well, it might be the definition of insanity keeps arguing that it doesn't exist too. So I might propose that. We're into it right now at this point, and where I'm going with it, if you look at that grass fire analogy, you have a population that is going to reach herd immunity at a given point in time, where the challenge is to make sure that we don't overwhelm the system, ICU beds,
so
based on the number of people that seem to end up in the hospital based on that ratio. And if you plot those out, those are your leading indicators and your lagging indicators, and that's what you have to look at.
What I'm going to request, Shane, is we have ICU numbers for various regions, and we would like those for our region.
Sure. So if you go to Medical Health or Alberta Health, you should be able to pull that information. I'll give you a link after the meeting so you can get it. So it's not coming from me. You go right to the horse's mouth, and I'll give you a link to the Alberta Health site, and then you can get the information from there, because that's where all the statistics should be coming from. Go to the source.
Absolutely.
And you would know that, Carla, given your background, right?
Well, I am looking right now at various zones, and the ICU numbers are actually lower in 2020 than they were in prior years. So
yeah, isn't that a great thing? And we also increase capacity. So maybe we'll want to see how that works. So if you have less people on the roads and highways and moving around and causing less incidents, then that's fantastic. And given that the ICU is not specifically isolated for COVID patients, you have to understand that it's an elastic state. Again, Carla, given your background, you would surely understand that.
I surely do. And I actually, you know, the kinds of people that I rub shoulders with are surgeons and medical professionals every single day, scientists. And they are reporting that they are not.
Well, then you're asking questions that you already have the answer, and I would ask you what the intent of asking questions of someone who's non-medical, that you know the system better than they do. So let's not play silly bugger, Carla. Is there another person that has a question?
I will enlighten you, Shane, if you just
Is there another person that has a question, Carla? Because obviously you want to gain certain answers, and I'm being very transparent. And if this line of questioning continues, I will go to the next person who's a constituent on the line, regardless of the mediator, and I will talk over top of you, because that would be my prerogative at this point.
Just to finish that up, the reports from the medical professionals is that ICU does not have more COVID patients. They are seeing more people with shotgun wounds, with all kinds of suicide attempts.
So where are you getting this information from? Is it the individuals you rub shoulders with, or is it from the Alberta Health site?
It's right from people in the front lines.
Okay, so it's not from the Alberta Health site. You're taking it on people you have dialogues with. Could you provide that to my office and get their names and signatures on that, please?
I absolutely will. Thank you for that opportunity.